Hare Krishna. Welcome back to Srimad Bhagavatam class, first canto. We are reading from the fourth chapter. Today we will start elaborating on the fifth verse of the fourth chapter, which is where we began last Sunday. And as I promised and assured, I will be going slow. And we took almost 1.5 hours for the first verse. Then we covered second, third, and fourth on the last session on Wednesday. And now we will study from the fifth to eighth verse. Let us see how much we can cover. And I hope all of you are in good humor and you're able to take the lockdown in positive spirit, because this lockdown is a great opportunity for devotees to come closer to Krishna. And it is an opportunity for us to reduce our, to increase social distancing, but to reduce our emotional distance from Krishna. It is an opportunity for us to come closer. So I hope all devotees are positive and they are cheerful, in good humor. And so this small seva I would like to do of giving a Bhagavatam class, hoping that this will also inspire us to absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness. So we are in text 5. So you can please repeat after me. Who will read the translations today? It is a turn of Prabhuji. I think last time it was Mataji to read. So who would like? Pavan Prabhu, are you there? Or Abhishek? Anyone?
Yes, Prabhu, I'm there.
Pavan, okay. So Pavan, you read the translations or purports whenever I tell you, okay?
Okay, Prabhu.
So text 5, all of you can please repeat after me. Now, before we read text 5, please understand that so far in these first 4 verses, what we have discussed is Shaunaka Rishi is excited, he's super excited because he has heard the answers to 6 questions to Sutta Goswami. Now Shaunaka Rishi has 3 main categories of questions to Sutta Goswami. First, he wants to know about Srimad Bhagavatam. What exactly, how Srimad Bhagavatam appeared? I mean, Vasudeva had already written Mahabharata and he had already written so many scriptures. So where was Bhagavatam spoken? Why was it spoken? And what was the occasion? So he is excited to know about Srimad Bhagavatam. Second thing he really wants to know in great detail, which we are also discussing now, is about the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami. Can you please tell us about him? He's such a great personality. So here there is glorification of Shukdev Goswami. And third is about Parikshit Maharaj, the hearer of the original Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and the remaining first canto from the 5th chapter onwards, 4th chapter onwards, till the 19th chapter is an answer to these 3 categories of questions. So before we discuss the answers, first let us see the questions where we have already discussed the question about Srimad Bhagavatam. Now is the question on Shukdev Goswami. So in the 4th verse, which we discussed last time, Shaunaka Rishi says that Shukdev Goswami was a great personality. He was equibalanced, he was Mahayogi, he was fully focused, Nirvikalpakaha. He was an absolutely absorbed in Brahman, and he was Ekantamatir, one-pointed determination, Unnidro, he had conquered ignorance, and he used to roam around as if he had nothing to do with the world. Budo Muda Ivayati. And then we discussed the concept of self-effacing, how a pure devotee keeps himself low profile. So, having given these qualities of Sukadeva Goswami, now Shaunaka Rishi in text 5 will elaborate on one of those qualities, which is Nirvikalpakaha, absorbed, so absorbed that he has forgotten the external world, he's so absorbed in Krishna. So, what is that? So, we'll discuss the 5th verse and the 6th verse together. So, please repeat after me. Drishtva nuyantam rishimatmajamapanaknam. Drishtva nuyantam. Devyo riha paridadurna sutasya chitram. Tadviksha pritchati munau jagadustavasti. Stripum bhidanatu sutasya vivikta drishthe.
While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth. Although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions.
So here we see, we touched briefly upon this last time, that Shukdev Goswami was so indifferent that he was looking all around and he was completely naked and he was walking. And these girls were taking bath. They immediately saw Shukdev Goswami and they didn't get any, they were not at all bewildered, agitated, or they didn't feel scared or they didn't feel awkward. But when Vyasdev came, they immediately covered their bodies. So Vyasdev was surprised. So he asked them that, how come I am your grandfather's age? So they said, no, your son is completely detached from material world. And we could see that he is transcendental. So we had absolutely no feeling of shame, or we knew that he's not even looking at our bodies. He's transcendent. So Shaunaka Rishi is saying this amazing quality of Shukdev Goswami, that he is so absorbed that for him, naked girls did not matter. So none of us are on that level. But at least hearing this, we become like, wow, there are such personalities in history. So then Shaunaka Rishi says, now this verse is connected to the 6th verse. And he was so absorbed that he was going around like a madman. People did not recognize him. And that is the 6th verse. You can please repeat after me. Katam alakshita paure samprapta kuru jangalan unmatta muka jadavat vicharan gaja savaye.
How was he, Srila Sukdev, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering in the province of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded?
So externally, he was completely appearing like a madman, dumb, retarded. But internally, he was so advanced and was so absorbed in Krishna. And these women recognized, and they did not feel shy in front of him. So these two verses are extremely powerful verses. They reveal the psychology of or the makeup of Sukdev Goswami. What was his level of advancement, that is revealed in these verses. So, and if you see in the purport, all of you have your Bhagavatam in front of you. I'll read. See where Prabhupada writes, the ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor. Just as by looking at a child, one can understand how innocent he is. Sukdev Goswami is a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Sukdev Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. So the ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, and they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom, because Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. So this is very, very interesting. You know, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur paraphrases this conversation in a very beautiful way. He says the ladies, Shukdev Goswami was Vivikta Drishti, was completely absorbed in Krishna, he was focused. So when Vyasadeva asked them, how come you didn't cover yourself when my son made? He's a young man. So they said, no, he is transcendental and he has pure vision. So then Vyasadeva asked them, how do you know? So they said, we saw in his eyes and we knew that he's pure, so we didn't bother to cover ourselves. So Vyasadeva said, how can you know by seeing his eyes? So the women said, we have the sixth sense. We can, by looking at the eyes of men, we can know their intention. This was the statement of the women. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that how, in that purport, he says how the women, they have the power to know the inner truth of men by looking at their eyes. So therefore, in the renounced order, there is a popular joke, in the Brahmachari ashram, often we say that if somebody wants sannyas, he should be told that you should stand in front of 5 women, and these women should look into your eyes, and they should give a certificate that is qualified for sannyas. So this is a gift of Krishna. They can know. So therefore, they can know whether you are a brahmachari or a brahmachari. So these women, they saw Shukdev Goswami, and they knew that he's a real high-class renunciant. He's pure, completely pure. And Srila Prabhupada writes one more point in the purport, that, in the end, that in the last line of this 206 page number 206 on my book, the purport, Prabhupada says, a householder has to distinguish between male and female, otherwise he cannot be a householder. So when Vyasdev came, they covered themselves. Now this does not mean that Vyasdev was not pure. Remember, last Sunday I spoke about Shastra Yukti, logic of Shastra. Don't now conclude that, oh, Shukdev Goswami was pure, Vyasdev was not pure, that's why they covered themselves. No, Vyasdev is also pure, but he was playing the role. Just like when God comes as Varahadev, he like a Varaha, like a boar, Lord was, acting like that. So when Krishna came in Dwarka as Grahastha, he was a householder. He did activities, services of a Grahastha. Similarly, when Lord came as Vyasdev, so he was playing the role. Because he was a householder, he had to be treated like that. So the women covered themselves properly. That is a social custom and etiquette. That does not in any way prove that he is not pure. But Prabhupada's next sentence is very important. It says, one should therefore, now the principle of it, before we go into this, the principle of knowing that we are not the body, we are the soul. Although we're not at the level of Shukdev Goswami, but we are aspiring, we want to reach that stage of purity eventually, where it doesn't matter whether a person is male or female. In the sense, we are not agitated by lust. We're not agitated by the material energy. We have to reach that stage. So Srila Prabhupada instructs us in this purport. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Shukdev Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. It does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of this spiritual vision is a liberated state, and Shukdev Goswami attained that stage. So this is a very, very important section within this purport, and this is one of the landmark verses and purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, because this is introducing us to the power of the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. What a personality is Shukdev Goswami. So how much ever we glorify him will be less. But this purport is a master stroke. Prabhupada reveals to us, instructive also, that we have to know that ultimately male female is simply a covering for the body, and we have to see that, we have to know that, oh, this is just we have to know that this is simply a dress, male, female, and we have to transcend. Now, is this possible, practically speaking? No. Practically speaking, we have to be careful. We have to understand there is Maryada, but we have to work. See, why we are following the etiquette and protocol of male, female, like we have different sections. Men are sitting here, women are sitting here. We have a protocol of how to talk to women, how to deal with men and women, like that. So that culture we follow. While we follow that culture, by hearing scriptures and statements of scriptures like this and examples like this, we aspire and we seek to come to a stage where we don't distinguish a person based on male, female, bodily distinction. We understand that everyone is a pure spirit soul who is covered by body. Some bodies are male, some bodies are female. And male, female is simply a dress. Ultimately, what is important is the soul, who is pure spirit. And the only distinguishing thing we should do is, we should understand that there are only two personalities. Male and female is actually only two. only one male is there, and that is Krishna. Krishna is Purusha. And all living entities, whether it is human beings, whether it is male, female amongst humans, or whether it is tiger, dog, snake, trees, everything else in this material world is female. Even the male of humans are female. In the sense, we are all Prakriti, the inferior energy, and Krishna is Purusha, the original male. Purusha and Prakriti. So, and within Prakriti, we are all now inferior energy of Krishna. So here we see everyone as servant of Krishna. Now, I know we are not on that level, but this theoretical understanding we need to have, that all the different species that we have, whether it is a tree, whether it is birds, aquatics, reptiles, they were all different dresses provided by material nature. So therefore we have to, the first way we have to see, so the way we see living entities in this world, the first, the understanding that we develop, by which we eventually come to a stage of seeing everyone as pure spirit soul, that will come later. But first we have to begin by seeing everything in this material world as a product of matter, of Pancha Mahabhut, Bhumi, Rapu, Nalo, Vayu, Kham, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Everything, whether you take this mobile phone, your smartphone, or whether you take your body, whether you take a tree, everything, whether you take this house, everything is made of a combination of these five elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. What is this body? This body is a combination of Pancha Mahabhut, and this body has come, it has been created in this world, it will go away eventually. Whoever you are, we all have to die. We all have, our bodies will, the Bhagavatam says, the destination of the body is one of the three. Either it will become ashes, like the Hindus do. We burn the body, it becomes ashes. Or the Bhagavatam says the body will also become either ashes or it will become dust, because many people, they bury the body, so the body completely disintegrates. The third thing that can happen to the body, either it becomes ashes or it becomes dust, or Bhagavatam says it becomes stool. Like there are some cultures where they throw the body, or when the body dies and there is nobody to claim it, the vultures feast on that body. So when the vultures eat that body, so then that body, our human body, becomes food for the birds. So that food eventually becomes what? The birds will also pass stool. So that stool of that bird is actually this beautiful body that we are right now so attracted. So Bhagavatam very graphically describes that the ultimate destination of this body is either stool, dust, or ashes. Therefore, we should not be attracted to the body. We should understand this is simply made of Pancha Mahabhut. And animals and humans also, everyone is engaging in eating, sleeping, sex life, and defending, which is all centered on this body. And therefore, 13th chapter of Gita very beautifully explains that Kshetra and Kshetra, etadyo veti tam prahur, Kshetragya. So Krishna in the 13th chapter explains about Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetra means field of activity. Kshetragya is the knower of that field of activity. So this body is called as Kshetra, field, and the Atma, the soul, is Kshetragya, the one who knows this field, or one who has been given this field to operate, to work upon. So the 13th chapter of Gita says that every body is Kshetra, and the soul residing within that body is a Kshetragya. He is the proprietor, he is the owner, or he is the in charge of that field. That is a field, that is a body that has been given to that soul to perform his activities. And then the Bhagavad Gita says that there are two Kshetragyas, there are two proprietors of that body. One is a soul, and there is also super soul. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a king and a farmer. A farmer has a plot of land, which is his farm. So he is the owner of that land. But the king is the owner of all the lands in the kingdom. Similarly, the soul owns this body, but Paramatma, Krishna, he not only owns this body, he owns all the bodies. So Paramatma is all pervading. He is like the king. So there are So there is body and there is a soul. So we are the soul. Hmm? And we have been given this body. So I have been given this male body. Some of you have been given female bodies. Some souls have been given the body of a dog, or some have been given the body of an elephant. So now, as human beings, we can understand this, and we can slowly come to a stage of transcending the attractions to the body, which is the main reason why we entanglement in this material world. And Srimad Bhagavatam, the speaker himself comes up with such a dramatic, impact the speaker has. He's teaching by his own example the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, that we have to transcend these bodily attractions and bodily designations. Now, I admit we're not on that level. I'm not on that level. But by hearing, by discussing, by entering the space of the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can transcend eventually. So what is the understanding? This body is a kshetra. This is a space. This is a field given to us. Like, in our yatras, we have children. Children are given a kids zone to play. So they cannot go out of that zone. So that zone is where the children play. So they keep playing the whole day. And there is restriction. They cannot go beyond that. Similarly, we have been given this field. What is the field? The eyes, the ears, the nose, the sense of touch. So this is our field. So whole life, we are trapped in this field. We are not able to go beyond this field. Now, as a human being, we have the potential to go beyond this field. But generally, most of us, we are trapped. We only keep looking at things, beautiful things. We want to taste beautiful things. So, we want to smell nice. We are preoccupied with our senses. That means we are preoccupied. We are absorbed in this field. And therefore, we are not able to advance. Therefore, we are not able to go back to Krishna, because this field has trapped us. This Pancha Mahabhut, this body is, holding us. Like Radhesham Prabhu once gave a nice story that once a king was looking for a successor to his throne. So he called all eligible young men of his kingdom. And from the entrance of the gate, he said, you have a whole day, you can do what you want, but by the evening, by the sunset, you should reach the last gate. Whoever reaches there by sunset, and then there will be an interview there, and then they will be decided who will become the successor. So when the people entered, and they knew that they have time till sunset, so most of them, they began the journey. But what the king had done in the entire journey, he had kept beautiful, like one place there was beautiful music going on. So some people got attracted, they went there, they said, let us enjoy some music, but they were staying there only. But when you enjoy sense gratification, how time flies, you don't realize. So some people got lost and then they missed the bus. Some people went ahead, they saw there are a lot of Alfonso mangoes there, a lot of food items. So they were sitting there enjoying, they were partying. Some people went ahead, they saw beautiful girls there waiting, and they were trying to make friendships with these men. So as so many distractions were there, all these people got distracted. One young man was focused. He went walking straight to the end, and there he was, the only one who reached that spot. He was made the successor. So this story is told to explain how when we're absorbed in our senses, we forget time, and the whole life goes like that. Like, I don't know if I've experienced, if you put alarm for 3 o'clock in the morning, and then the alarm rings, you get up at 3 o'clock, and then you immediately snooze it, or you switch it off. You say, okay, I'll get up after 5 minutes, and then you sleep. And then when you wake up, you realize it is 5:30. So you think, but I thought only 5 minutes passed. This is what happens when we are really in sense gratification. 2.5 hours appears like 5 minutes. So that's the power of the sense gratification. So we absorb ourselves whole life in this kshetra, in our eyes, ears, sense of touch, and all this. So therefore, we are distracted from our spiritual path. So we have a long journey. So our journey begins first by understanding that, hey, wait, this body is simply a kshetra. I'm a pure spirit soul, and so is another person. So is every female, every male, every animal. Everybody is a pure spirit soul, and we have been given this field, and in this field, we have to go beyond this. You know, like we have a neighbor here. He's an old man now. I am seeing him since I was a young boy. So he has never left this small village in his entire life. He is now 80. And he's been doing some small work here. He's a pujari Brahmin, does some priest work. His entire life of 80 years, he has not left his village. And he has so many things to share about this small village. So many people, so many remembrances. Now, his kshetra, his field is this village. He has not thought of life beyond this village. There are some, I know one barber, whole life he's been only doing barbergiri. So he's only been, seeing all different shaving lotions, different scissors, different. Basically, the whole life has been dealing with barber work. That was his kshetra. Some of us, some life we have been barbers, some life we have been tiger, some life like this man we have been restricted to one village only. So the point I'm saying is, we all have been given a boundary, a kshetra, and in different species we are trapped in that kshetra. As a human being, we can rise beyond this. We can connect to that eternal soul who resides, who is the real I, who resides within this kshetra. Like I know one person, whole life he spent in a cloth shop. He did cloth business. From morning to night, he was only handling clothes. That was his kshetra. So now, some of you are men, some of you are women, and some of animals. Now we all have been given enjoyment facility in this kshetra, in this body. We also have been given restrictions. So whoever you are, you have both enjoyment and suffering in this body. So this is Pancha Mahabhut made up of 5 matter, and the soul is completely pure. So Shukdev Goswami, so when he's seeing these girls, or when he's seeing Parikshit Maharaj, when he's seeing anybody, he is not seeing this body made of Pancha Mahabhut. He is not seeing the kshetra. He is not seeing your restricted body, the field of activity. He is seeing the knower of the field of activity. So if you are a male or a female, you have suffering in your body. Admit it. You have restrictions. And you have enjoyment also. I remember once, one very, very famous Bollywood actress, she came to our temple. So there was a big news. Oh, she's come. Oh, everybody was talking about her. And then she had come to meet Maharaj, Adhana Swami Maharaj. So she was brought to his room and we were all there. So then Maharaj very warmly received her. So then she wanted to give some donation and they had a courtesy exchange. So then she went. So after some time after she left, there was a big excitement. Of course, she was nice makeup. She was beautiful. So after she left, Maharaj looked at all of us and Maharaj said, very nonchalantly, he made this statement. He said, how much this lady is suffering in this body. So we were stunned to hear that statement. Now Maharaj could see that there is birth, there is death, there is old age, there is disease, there are different miseries. So even in a beautiful body, she has a beautiful body, but a person with a transcendental vision will see that, oh, this body is matter and there is suffering. This is not the real I. A pure devotee can know the restrictions imposed, the limitations imposed by this body. So therefore, all living entities are suffering. We are all suffering because of this shit. And Srila Prabhupada would often quote this verse, this bhajan of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Anadi bahirmukha, anadi karma phale, kodi anadi karma phale, उड़िबा वर्णव जले तोरी बारे ना देखी उपाय तोरी बारे ना देखी उपाय anadi karma phale. For so many lifetimes we are engaging in these activities and we are going through this bhavarnava, this ocean of suffering, taking different bodies because we are not able to get out of this kshetra. This our consciousness is trapped in this zone, in this field of activity, and we are bound to a particular family and the sukha dukkha that comes. So when we get a particular field, some sukha is written, some dukkha is written. It's all written for us, and the souls are trapped in this setup. Hmm? So whether you're a man or a woman, you have to suffer. And then finally, and each male or female, or even an animal you see, we all have been given this eyes, ears. The Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam calls this body in a very poetic language as Navadvara Pure Dehi. Navadvara. Yeah? This body is called as a city of 9 gates. What a way to explain this body. So this is called as a city. Now this city has 9 gates. Now what are the 9 gates? The 9 gates are the 9 holes in the body. The eyes, the nostrils, the mouth, the ears, and the anus and the genitals. So these are the 9 holes in the body. So in a poetic way, the Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Srimad Bhagavatam describes this as Navadvara, a city of 9 gates. So a pure devotee, he understands this is made of Panchamahabhuta. This city is temporary. This city is going to get destroyed. And this has 9 gates. Now, if you think of it, come to think of it, what comes out of this hole of the body? Is there anything that comes out of these holes which we want to preserve and cherish? No. I mean, in fact, give a simple example. If you don't brush your teeth for a few days, then forget other people. You yourself can't stand your body. I mean, uh, the body is so abominable. It's such an embarrassment. It's obnoxious, even for the occupant of the body, what to speak of others. So, therefore, a pure devotee cannot seek enjoyment from another human body because he is transcended. Shukdev Goswami is, of course, at the highest level. And we are at the lowest level because we chase matter, we chase the bodies. Like, I don't know if you've seen dogs, of course, we all have seen. The dogs, when the car comes, the dogs chase the car. Now, the dogs don't know that there is a driver. They don't have the understanding that there is a driver who is driving the car. For the dog, the car is what he chases. So we chase after bodies like the dog chases after a car. We have no idea that there is a driver, there is a soul within. So our ability to see the soul is as constricted as the dog is unable to appreciate the driver of a car. But Shukdev Goswami is that self-realized soul who can see that there is a driver who is managing the car, who is driving the car. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is talking in this purport about this perverted distinction. We have this distinction of one cannot become like Shukdev Goswami. One should not try to become a sannyasi like Shukdev Goswami because we know that we don't have this advancement. But we should know that theoretically that we are neither male nor female, and this dress is made by material nature so that we can attract the opposite sex, and thus we remain in material entanglement. So this is how we are trapped. So therefore, the first understanding is this. So we are Pancha Mahabhut, body is made up of all matter. We understand it's made up of 9 holes, and all things come out of these 9 holes. Thirdly, we understand we are not. So the 3 things will help us understand and understand that we are not the body, we are the soul, and to come out of this distinction of male female, 3 things are needed. First is to understand we are not. This body is made up of Pancha Mahabhut, and it's all going to become either dust or ashes or stool. Second is this body has got 9 gates or 9 holes, and all things are coming out of this 9 holes, and it is nothing great. It's basically obnoxious and an embarrassment. And the third thing is only one Purusha. The only distinction we should know is that the reality is Krishna is the only Purusha and we are all Prakriti. In fact, the men are also Prakriti, and and in the material world, even the females, they try to be Purusha. See, we're all trying to be Purusha, that's why we suffer. We try to be enjoyers, that's why we suffer. So when we fix ourselves in the position that I am not the Purusha, I am a servant, Dasa. So the position of servant is what will help us realign to our constitutional position. Now, before we reach that position of pure advanced position of being a servant of Krishna, we need to first theoretically understand that I am not Purusha, I am not the enjoyer, and we have to give up this Purusha bhava. Now, in this world, if you see, even women have this Purusha bhava, although they may be Stree, but they also have Purusha bhava. Like, a man gets married to a woman thinking that, oh, he's an illusion. He thinks, I am Purusha, I'll enjoy. She's a woman, she will be subservient to me. She'll just obey and she'll do what I say. But he doesn't realize that just like he has a Purusha bhava, she also has Purusha bhava. So after marriage, he sees her Purusha bhava conflicting with his Purushatva. So then there is so much mess, isn't it? So we all have this. And to the extent we have this, we suffer in this world. I remember when I was distributing books once in the local train, I entered and I was making an announcement, buy this book of Prabhupada, and then I would give it. So we have techniques of how to sell the books, and we do all that. So as I was making an announcement, one big man with a big mustache and heavy set looked ferocious and looked very manly, and he was also big in size. So he just, come here, he asked me to come, and his wife was next to him, and she was completely covered in a sari or pallu was covered like this. So she was very submissive and she didn't even look up. So I knew that and we have a technique in book distribution that whenever you see a couple, give the book in the hand of the lady and talk to the man. So the man's ego is satisfied and the woman feels good that she thinks she got some kind of a gift. So that's the kind of a silly techniques we used to use. So seeing that, so this man called me, I immediately gave the book in the hand of the lady. She was holding it. Of course, I didn't even see her face. Her whole thing was covered. And then I started talking to the man, and this man was bossing around. He was saying, what is this? You're a young man. You should be not selling books. You should be working in a company. So this was 20 years ago when I was actually a young man. So 22 years ago, actually. So this man kept giving me a lecture in front of everyone. You're a young man. You should not be doing all this. He was like a big brother was instructing me. But I was okay. I was being very humble because I had an agenda. I wanted to sell the book. So I kept listening to him. I kept humoring him. And I said, okay, sir, please take this book. Please take this book. So finally, he felt, I invoked his pity because his ego was, I wanted to massage his ego because that was giving him joy. So I said, fine, please take this book. They said, okay. He felt kind of pity on me. So he took out 50 rupees from his pocket. There was Bhagavad Gita, that time was 50 rupees. He gave 50 rupees, took the Gita. So the Gita was in his wife's hand, so I gave 50 rupees. And then I took the 50 rupees and as soon as I put it in my pocket, suddenly this lady was all the while submissive, quiet, Stree, and he was like the Purusha in charge of the whole compartment. Suddenly this lady removed her pallu. She looked at him and she blasted. She said, क्या करते हो जी, पूरा पुस्तक लेके खरीदते रहते हो, पूरा दुनिया भर का किताब लेके घर पे रखते हो. She started, wow, she was somebody that I have still not forgotten her. You can imagine, even after 22 years, I am remembering her. So she kind of created such an impact that this man started squeaking like a mouse. He completely changed. He became so gentle, then the whole equation changed. And I realized, my God, I had a partner, book distribution partner also, Raj Gopal. I looked at him, I said, Prabhu, I think she'll now turn her guns on us. So immediately we ran away from there. We got off the train, we went to the next compartment. But the point I'm trying to say here is that everybody has Purusha Bhav. That is the point. So from childhood, if you see, from childhood, our Purusha Bhava is developed, enjoyer tendency. So if we want to develop Shukdev Goswami's vision, we have to cultivate Dasa Bhav. You see children, when you take the child is playing, I've seen children fight. The one child takes another child's bat or a ball or a tiffin box. But there is so much of fighting, that possession, that greed. You can see signs of greed, lust. It starts early on because that's the way material world has been made. Everybody is struggling to be Purusha. Hmm? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada often quote this verse, Jiva Krishnadas e Vishwas karle tohar dukkha nai. Only when we are fixed in the position of being Krishna's servant, there will be no more suffering. So, therefore, our suffering is because we have forgotten Krishna. Krishna bhulya jeev anadi bahirmukh ateva maya tara deha samsara. So because you have forgotten Krishna, Krishna bhulya jeev, and for long lifetimes, how many lifetimes you have done that? Ataeva maya tara. That's why material energy is giving a lot of dukkha. And Shukdev Goswami is teaching us that we need to transcend this. We need to come to the stage of pure vision. What is that beautiful verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Krishna bhulya jeev bhogavancha kare nikatastha maya tare japatiya dhare. Krishna bhulya jeev. When we forget Krishna, Krishna bhulya jeev bhogavancha kare. I want to enjoy. That becomes the goal. And at that time, nikatastha maya is very next, standing next to us. As soon as we have this Purusha Bhava to enjoy through our senses, through this body, through this field of activity, Krishna bhulya jeev bhogavancha kare nikatastha maya tare. Maya is right next. Japatiya dare. She just grabs us and she continues the cycle of suffering. Therefore, this is a very, very important verse. And we see how Shukdev Goswami is completely transcended this. He was in a completely different stage, like we see Shukdev Goswami's standard. He was called as Brahman realized. He was completely absorbed in Brahman. In fact, he didn't take birth for 16 years. This is an interesting pastime. He was in the womb of his mother, not for 9 months. For 16 years, he didn't come out. So Vyasdev kept telling him, my dear child, come out, come out. So Shukdev Goswami from the womb, we would tell him that I'm afraid of Maya, I cannot come. So Vyasdev told him, please come out, why are you, don't give trouble to me and my wife, please come out. So Shukdev Goswami said, I cannot come because Maya will catch you. I remember I think last time we discussed in the previous verse where Srila Prabhupada writes, Shukdev Goswami is a liberated soul in text number 4 purport. Therefore, he always remained alert not to be trapped with illusory energy. So, a pure devotee is so alert not to be trapped by the illusory energy. How much alert we should be? So, Shukdev Goswami in the womb is telling his father, I cannot come out because Maya will catch me. Maya, nikatastha Maya tare jhapati adare. I don't want to be trapped by Maya. So, Vyasdev said, see, my dear son, I will assure you, please come out of the womb. I assure you that you will not be trapped by Maya. So, Shukdev Goswami, while still in the womb, he told Vyasdev, who wants your assurance? Huh? See, just now you said that don't give trouble to me and my wife. That means you are still affected by material energy and duality you are seeing in terms of you, your wife, your family, your home. So I can't take your assurance seriously. So Vyasdev said, okay, then whose assurance you want? Then Shukdev Goswami, still in the womb, he said, if a person who controls Maya, he gives me an assurance that I will not be affected by Maya, then I'm willing to come out. But then Vyasdev said, okay, fine, done. Immediately Vyasdev went to Dwarka. That time Krishna was in Dwarka. He requested Krishna. Then Krishna came and convinced Shukdev Goswami to come out of the womb, and I gave him an assurance that he won't be trapped in Maya. And Krishna, when he was speaking to Shukdev Goswami, he was so impressed by Shukdev Goswami's beautiful, melodious, sweet, charming voice. Therefore, Krishna said, your voice is so beautiful. So I will call you Shuka, parrot. So Krishna did Namkaran of Shukdev Goswami. So after Krishna's assurance, Shukdev Goswami appeared. So then, of course, this incident which we are seeing now in this verse today happened later. So this is what I spoke just now is before the birth of Shukdev Goswami. So he was such an advanced level. In fact, he was so sense controlled that once they put on his tongue, gulab jamun, jalebi, crispy. Just imagine hot, crispy jalebi. and gulab jamun, soft, succulent, or ecstatic cake. So when you hear these sweets, what is happening to you? Are you salivating? Right? All of us, saliva, we don't need the jalebi on our tongue. Just thinking of jalebi or gulab jamun, we salivate. So once Shukdev Goswami, he was told to stretch his tongue out. He stretched his tongue. They put sweets on his tongue, and not a drop of saliva came. So he was somebody, right? He is not like you and me. That was the level at which he was in. So therefore, this is the Brahma. This is the position at which Shukdev Goswami was. And the text 6 which we read is also interesting. Here it is said that he appeared like a madman, dumb and retarded, so nobody could recognize his exalted position. Srila Prabhupada also in this purport, he writes a very beautiful statement. I want Pavan Prabhu, if you are still there, can you read the purport? I'll tell you when to stop.
Yes, Prabhu. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapur because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Sukdev, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. A sage is not therefore recognized by sight but by hearing.
Wait. A sage, repeat the sentence again and then continue.
A sage is not therefore recognized by sight but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or great sage not to see but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Sukdev Goswami.
Fine. So this is very, very important sentence Prabhupada is writing. A sage is not recognized by sight but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu not to see but to hear him. We go to sadhu. Why? See, this is very important purport. Sukdev Goswami, therefore, he roamed around like a madman because he didn't want people to come and disturb him. Now, there are many examples actually. If you see in the Bhagavatam, there is example of Rishabh Dev also. He was incarnation of the Lord, but he lived like a madman, but that nobody came to him. Prahlad Maharaj saw one very Avdut, he was very fat, lying. Nobody recognized him, but Prahlad Maharaj recognized him. Jada Bharat was such an exalted devotee, but he went around madman. Then we have another example, the Yadu king in the 11th canto saw one Avdut Brahmana. So there are examples. Now I have a question to all of you. Why these great souls, why do they hide themselves like this? Now, these pure devotees could also come on an elephant. They could come with a lot of YouTube videos and Facebook profiles. They could say that I'm the greatest. Why these great souls? Why they hide their glories? Anybody would like to answer? Why they are not showing? Why they are not revealing? Why Sukdev Goswami was not revealing? Why tell everyone who he was? Why did he go around like that? Why do great?
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
Hare Krishna,
please.
Prabhu, can I answer that?
Please.
Yes, Prabhu, I feel that, these pure souls, they want to not make use of their senses, because more they make use of their senses, being in the material world, they will be getting disturbed. So they want to be aloof and away.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Any other answers? So Rupali Mataji is saying, Rupali Mataji, right? I can't see you. So
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
So Rupali Mataji is saying that they don't want to engage their senses. So what you are saying is reminding me of a verse in the Gita where Krishna says, Kurmo Gani va sarvasha. Like, they withdraw their senses from matter and they engage only in service of the Lord. That's a nice answer. Any other answer why great souls don't reveal their glory, they hide their qualities?
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Wait. One person, okay. Who is this?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Paraj Parikshit Prabhu, say.
Oji, this the great sages, they are of two types. One are Bhajnanandi and Goshtanandi. Those who are Bhajnanandi, they are in absorbed in their own bhajan, and to certain extent Goshtanandi may uh, show their glories to other people to attract them. And Bhajananandi devotees, they don't even care, that they are not even aware that they have to exhibit the glories.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Raj Parikshit Prabhu. So, any other reasons why great souls don't show their qualities and they hide?
May I,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
I feel this is because this is the self-effacing quality.
Yeah.
Just like how you had given an example last time that in a CV, you have very little qualifications, but you normally fluff it up because you want
Correct.
to present a very pretty picture so that you get taken in your, you want to show your qualifications. But
Correct.
here, he knows that this is not permanent.
Correct.
There's no need to broadcast this because since the human body is going to be disintegrated, he has become internalized to this absolute truth,
Correct.
and he has aligned himself to these truths. Everything is
Perfect.
going to be disintegrated. No
Correct.
need to blow your own trumpet.
Correct. Correct. Thank you. Thank you so much for this answer. Anybody else? One last answer on why
Hare
great
Krishna
souls hide
Prabhu.
their qualities. Yes. Who is this?
Dinanath Mahaprabhu Das.
Yeah. Bolo Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I have heard that the person who glorifies themselves is called as a dad. A person who glorifies himself or herself is
Ah.
called as a dad. Like he's no, like
Ah.
he's. So
Correct.
I
Correct.
don't remember the past time exactly, but I heard this.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, correct. So it is like you are a dead man. You can't be glorifying yourself, right?
Correct.
Correct. So basically, these are the reasons. But you see, many people, many of these pure devotees, they don't want materialistic people to disturb them. Like Jagannath Babaji Maharaj used to chant and do his bhajan in the toilet, public lavatory, where it was very dirty and stinking. He would go there and do bhajan so that nobody came and disturbed him. Another reason why people don't show their qualities is because they don't want to get distracted. And thirdly, they're genuinely humble. They genuinely feel, and they don't like name fame. So, and as Raj Parishit Prabhu also beautifully said, they're so absorbed in Krishna, and their qualities are naturally hidden. But Prabhupada says very beautiful in one place that the symptom of a great soul is he speaks Krishna-katha, he speaks wisdom. Srila Prabhupada said that a fool is unrecognized till he opens his mouth. So once a person starts speaking, you can know the substance that is made of. So Srila Prabhupada gave the example that everybody has a symptom. He said a diseased person has a symptom. Now you can know if somebody starts now coughing loudly, so immediately you know he's sick. Now since the coronavirus started, brahmacharis, I know many of brahmacharis, we used to regularly get cold and cough and all that. But recently I heard that since the coronavirus thing started, pandemic started, nobody's coughing in the ashram. They're scared to cough because immediately they'll be suspected of having coronavirus. So so that is sick person has his symptoms. Prabhupada said a rich man has his symptoms. So if he comes in a Jaguar, if he comes in a Lamborghini, so we know that he's a very wealthy man. So Prabhupada said similarly, a Krishna conscious person has his symptoms. He will glorify Krishna. He will speak spiritual subject matters. So a pure devotee, he's not interested in broadcasting his own glories. As Mataji rightly said, he will not blow his own trumpet because I don't have to show off. So if those are interested in spiritual subject matters, they will come to me. And therefore, when we recognize a sadhu, we recognize a sadhu not by the beard he has or not by the fantastic costume that he puts on and the turban he puts on and the very flashy, attractive outfits. No, we are attracted to a sadhu by the content. And these two verses reveal both how we should see a sadhu, a pure devotee, and how a pure devotee like Shukdev Goswami sees the world. A pure devotee like Shukdev Goswami is completely indifferent. That's what we have seen. And then we also saw how the people, they should see a pure devotee. They should see him through Vani. They should understand. They should hear him, not simply judge him based on, sadhu ka darshan is not important. Sadhu ka shravan, is more important. Of course, darshan is also important. Please don't get me wrong, because when we take darshan of a pure devotee, our material desires vanish. So it's true. But of the two, Shravan, hearing from a pure devotee, is more important than darshan. So this is what the scriptures say. And so now, before that is, we could go to the next 7th and 8th also, but I want to pause here and um, revisit this point which we have discussed in 5 and 6. Sorry, 4 and 5 and 6. Yeah, we discussed about the theme that came out was that Shukdev Goswami is transcendental, and we also need to eventually come to an understanding that none of us are male, female. We are all Prakriti. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. We are servants of Krishna. And the theoretical journey, the journey towards this realization is by understanding that this body is made up of Panch Mahabhut, earth, water, fire, and ether, and it is going to disintegrate to stool, dust, or ashes. And we also have to understand this is simply a bag of 9 holes. And also, we have to be absorbed in the thought that Krishna is the supreme Purusha and we are his servants. And this is the platform of peace. This is the platform of living peacefully in this mad world. Now, having explained so much, I would like to now, before we go to verse number 7, I want to spend a little time on this concept of, connecting to this higher self, the ability to see every living entity as a pure spirit soul, and thus experience real peace. Right now, we are confronted by this duality, this desire of lust, the desire to enjoy and exploit. Now, how do we transcend this? Now, and as long as we don't transcend, we will not be peaceful. That's a fact. In this material world, as long as we have this desire to bhoga vancha kare, the desire to enjoy sense gratification, the senses, we cannot be peaceful. One of the biggest tragedies of modern times is everybody's talking about peace, but simultaneously we're also increasing material desires. This is a complete bogus. This is a contradiction. There is a Nobel Peace Prize given every year. They give. Why do you think they give? And this gets a lot of media attention. The Nobel Peace Prize. Now this gets media attention because people somewhere they start feeling that, oh, peace. This person has got peace prize, so he may usher in peace in this world. Everybody is disturbed, everybody is suffering, and everybody wants peace. So they're hoping that, oh, Nobel Peace Prize means there will be peace in this world. Sorry, sir. The peace in this world is dependent on so many external factors, and all those permutations and combinations have to be perfect, and that will not happen. Therefore, it is beyond our control. It's utopia to think that there is peace in this world. But there is some hope of peace if we work on our own inner self. If I think how I can be peaceful within, then there is some hope of peace in the world. And within my own existence, I can never be peaceful and happy without understanding that I have 3 identities. See, we have to understand our identity. Most of these people in this world, we are stuck up at the identity of the body, which is the lowest level of identity, which is the Kshetra identity. The Kshetra, this body, the senses. We are trapped in this identity, the bodily identity. I am, first identity is identity 1. Remember this. Identity 1, which is a reality, which we have to take care of, is this body. Identity 1 is body, which means I want food. So basically the body wants to enjoy food, money, clothes, house. I want. That is the identity of the body. And those who live in this, if our predominant identity is body, we will always suffer, because the body has a limitation. It doesn't have much capacity. The demand of the senses that is much more than the capacity of the body to provide. Like, for example, tongue. the tongue's craving for good food is much more than the body's capacity to accept. That's why you see in this world there's plenty of food, still there's a lot of diseases, because people are eating the diseases. The people without food are 800 million people, but people suffering from obesity and overeating are 1 billion. That means 200 million people more are suffering because of eating more than not having food. That means in this world, essentially, the identity of the body gives suffering. And but it doesn't mean we ignore the body. Don't get me wrong. Body's needs have to be taken care of, but we have to rise beyond the body. Therefore, this is one of the biggest paradoxes. The scriptures say that don't keep increasing the needs and desires of the body. That is like putting ghee on fire. The more we enjoy, we are adding fuel to the fire. And the modern society talks about peace on the one hand, and on the other hand, they're igniting material desires. So this is a complete contradiction. There cannot be peace if we are talking about peace and you're also making people buy more, spend more, eat more. So modern consumerist culture is all about at the level of bodily identity, and we have grown up in this consumerist culture. Consumer is what? Consume, 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 and you die. Mar. The one who consumes and dies is consumer. So our whole culture is a consumerist culture. Therefore, we'll never be peaceful as long as we are living in this economics. This is modern economics teaching. As long as this is our makeup, we will not be happy. We will not be peaceful. So therefore, to rise to the level of Shukdev Goswami, we have to first get out of this bodily identity. And some people are intelligent. They understand body cannot be satisfied. They get stuck in the second identity, the identity of the mind, intelligence, whatever, the subtle identity. So in that identity, the identity of the mind is what is the identity of body? I want food. The identity to mind is I want love. So these people, they always talk of love. See, this is another amazing paradox. Love is also something which, even if you get lot of love, I've seen, and I'm sure you also have experienced, people are never satisfied. They want more love. People will keep saying, "Arey, I'm not getting enough love. I want more love." And when you hear the word love, whenever we hear the word love, immediately we think of, "Oh, how I wish somebody loved me." The whole idea about love is, oh, somebody should love me. I'm not getting sufficient love. So actually, this identity of the mind is not much different from the identity of the body. Both are centered on I want. So those who are in the identity of body, they are trapped by I want food. Those who are trapped by the identity of the mind, they think I want love. So see, when a child is growing, he needs both food and love. In fact, if children don't get both food and love, then they grow up as adults with personality disorder issues. So we are not discounting the importance of fulfilling the bodily and mental needs. But my dear friends, we also have a third identity, which if we don't connect, which is our real identity, which is the identity of the soul, if we don't connect to that identity, then we will never be happy. We will never rise to the level of transcendence. And that identity of the soul is, what is the identity of the body? I want food. What is the identity of the mind? So when we are at the level of I want love, we are thinking I'm deprived of love. That means we should know I'm living in the mental world. When I'm living in the world of gross things, I want gross property, money, finance, food, then I'm living in the identity of the body. So we always live in the identity of the body and the mind. But identity of the soul, we start to live when we start saying, I want to love. I want to give love. See, this is the difference between mind and spirit identity. The mind identity is I want love. The soul's identity is I want to love. I want to give love. So there are people in this world, even amongst in our society also we can see, who give. What this culture of giving, serving, contributing. So these are the people you'll see, they have begun the journey. They are actually, they may not be spiritually advanced like Shukdev Goswami, but they have somewhere embarked on a journey beyond the self, beyond the body and mind. Those who live a voluntary life of poverty, giving, Like, Warren Buffett has given so much charity. There are people in our society also, like Abdul Kalam, or Narendra Modi, or I know some leaders from RSS and other organizations who have led a voluntary. I know one very big leader who was a very simple man. I've known him personally from childhood. He's no more now. He was a physics teacher, was also an astrologer. He had a big family to take care of. In his school, whatever salary he got, he used that. But he taught children in the neighborhood free. He also gave astrological consultation free. He never charged from money from anyone. And all his family, 9 people in his family, all of them grew to be respectable members in the society with good positions. Everybody is well placed, high values of giving. So I could see, and this person led a very low profile life, nothing to show off. So you can see he was spiritual. He may not be a Hare Krishna devotee, but he had risen from the identity of the body and the mind. Therefore, those who live in this identity of the soul, you will see that their bodily and mental needs also reduce. They can live with less. So this is the secret of happiness: to live with, to give and to minimize our selfish needs. See, there is a difference between starving and fasting. Somebody is not getting any food, is starving. We're not talking about starving, but somebody eats starvishly, is fasting, he gets power. Poverty is miserable, but voluntarily giving up comforts, voluntarily choosing poverty, that's different. That gives you power. But I'm assuming that's possible. That's possible only if one actually is living at the level of the soul, spirit, of giving, of wanting to give love. A modern society is what? You take. So therefore, we are exactly in opposition with the modern society. Because modern society talks about buy more, spend more, So we cannot. Therefore, there is no peace in this world. First of all, therefore, the point is, can we begin this journey after today's class? Can we come to this state? Can we start the journey of living connected to the identity of the soul? See, bodily and mental identities we are anyway living always. Can we now begin to embark on a journey of the soul? Can I step in to make a difference today? That I am going to now begin a life where I'm going to spend some time daily in my identity as a soul, as a spirit, whose real identity, natural identity, is to give, to serve. See, now you may say, okay, fine, Prabhuji, I want to serve. I want to be in the identity of giving. But still, I'm a devotee for the last 25 years and I'm serving, but I'm not happy. Now, this is a open secret. Many devotees also have depression issues. Many devotees have served for decades are also miserable. And we are so unsympathetic and inhuman. We tell them, oh, this is natural, you will suffer because material world is suffering. And we actually make them more miserable because we don't give them hope. But Krishna says in the Gita, Ashantasya kutah sukham. If you're not peaceful, you cannot actually be happy in Krishna consciousness. Devotees we have to understand that, when we talk about spiritual life, many of us are in illusion. We're cheating ourselves, saying that I am a devotee for 20 years, so I should be happy. I should be happy. But are you happy? No, I am not happy, but I should be happy. Wait. If we are devotees, we are actually experiencing Krishna. We should be not like Shukdev Goswami, but at least we should be pure. We should be happy. We should be blissful. But if we are not, then we have to understand that spiritual peace and happiness is also at 2 levels. At first level, first let us say level 0. Level 0 is bodily and mental identity. Level 0 is where we are simply living in our kshetra, satisfying our bodily needs, absorbed in this area, field of activity that we have been given. That is level 0, and that is only suffering in that level. Now, there are some people who come to level 1, which is a level where they actually connect to that eternal soul within them. How do you do that? You do that by meditation, by chanting, by certain spiritual practices. Right now, because of the mind's too much of noise, we are not able to connect to that soul. But if we actually pause, if we actually slow down our activities, if we actually listen to our chanting, we can enter the space of soul, and you will experience a peace. If you are present, if you are actually doing proper meditation, you will experience peace. But what Krishna consciousness offers is level 2, which is love. Love is higher than peace. We'll come to love later. But peace is possible for you and me. Although this material world is nasty, but if we see, peace is, the example given, Shushupti. Shushupti is deep sleep. The Vedas Upanishads explain that. Have you ever experienced deep sleep? How you feel when you get up after deep sleep? There are no dreams. There is nothing. You're just like, when you get up, you are like, wow. So when you're in deep sleep, that is considered as the level of peace. The peace is understood. The spiritual peace is understood at the level of deep sleep. Shushupti means where you are not identifying. When you're in deep sleep, you're not identifying with the body. You're also not identifying with your mind. That's why you don't have dreams also. So samadhi, what Bhagavad Gita talks about, samadhi is something like Shushupti. It is where there is deep sense of peace, where there is no identification with the gross body, with the mind. But there is a big difference between Shushupti and samadhi. Samadhi is, the difference is in Shushupti, in deep sleep, you are not connecting to the body and the mind, but you are also not aware. There is no awareness. You are asleep. But in samadhi, although you are not connecting again to the body and mind, but there is deep awareness. You are aware. Means, see, that's why it is more pronounced. It is more happiness producing. You are awake. You are not sleeping. So samadhi is when you are awake, but you are not connected to the body and the mind. That's what Shukdev Goswami's level was. He was not connected to the body and the mind. So that's why in the 6th chapter of Gita, Krishna speaks about such a person who is in samadhi. Krishna says, he hears not from this ear, he sees not from this eye. His transcendental senses are awakened. That means his senses are not like yours. His senses are not operating at the level of your senses and my senses. His transcendental senses are awakened, which means a person in samadhi hears, but he is not hearing the sound you are hearing. He is hearing it from another realm. He may hear a flute sound of Krishna. We don't know. He sees what he doesn't see from the eyes. He doesn't hear from the ears. He's at another. I think we have discussed already. Pashyanti Vak. In the past we have discussed about Vaikari Vani, Madhyama, Pashyanti. So he's at a different level. Pashyanti Vani. So samadhi is possible, and that is a level of peace. So there are people who they don't live at the level 0. They are spiritualists, and you will find them in many spiritual organizations. Mayavadis also, they are at level 1. Impersonalists, they are at level 1 where they experience a certain kind of peace. Now we are at level 2. The devotees, we are not interested in peace. We have love for Krishna. We are practicing bhakti yoga. Level 1, people practice yoga. Through yoga, they connect to peace. But level 2 is the highest form of yoga, which is bhakti yoga, where there is surrender, and surrender is such a sweet experience, where there is a relationship with Krishna. There is a dynamic exchange of emotions with Krishna. So logically, a devotee should be most ecstatic, blissful, because he has love surging from his heart. And because of that love, compassion is overflowing, and he's giving love to everyone, and he's able to see everyone like Shukdev Goswami. But we are not able to, because we are not experiencing love. See, we all want that love. That's why Bhakti Yoga is highest. Why Krishna glorifies Bhakti? Because the natural position of the soul is to surrender to Krishna. Surrender is very natural. Just like, why do you think the fire, when you light fire, why does fire go up? Because what is the source of fire? Sun. So the fire will naturally go to the source. When you flow water, why does water naturally go down? Because the ocean is down. So the water flows down, fire goes up. Why does a child naturally look for mother, cry for mother? Because the child wants to go to his source. We all want to be connected to our source. If you keep 100 cows, the calf will know who is his mother. So there is a natural, in our search, our inquiry is all coming from a natural urge to be connected to our source. And that Parampita, that Krishna, is our Supreme Lord. So Bhakti Yoga is highest. Now, despite practicing Bhakti Yoga, despite chanting and hearing, if we are not experiencing that love, if you're not experiencing Krishna, then my humble suggestion is let us also, from level 0 we have jumped to level 2. Let us come to level 1. Let us explore possibilities of experiencing peace in our lives. Let us begin to serve selflessly. Let us begin to do some meditation. Let us begin to connect to the soul within through bona fide practices. And in that state of peace, we can connect to Krishna better. Now, I am tempted to speak this. I know it's 4:30 now, already 1.5 hours have passed. So I want to share one concept which has really helped me in my life. But it will take me some time to explain, and it's nearing 4:30 now. So do I have 10 minutes? What do we do? We will take a call on this. But it's a powerful concept which will help us understand how, even as devotees, although we have the highest process, we may not be at the level of Shukdev Goswami. We can, thank you, Mohit Prabhu. I'll take another 10 minutes. We can connect, we can experience peace in our day-to-day life. So what I'm going to speak now is based on my own struggle also. See, I think recently in one of our WhatsApp groups, there was a discussion on tips to improve chanting. So I didn't comment on that because I'm sorry. Yeah. So basically, I have to go now. But I was thinking the Wednesday class we have, we'll continue with where I left off today. So I'll summarize where I'm at a very important juncture, which I want to elaborate, but now it will take me a long time, and I'm also a little distracted by some things. So we have discussed Shukdev Goswami's position. He is completely on a transcendental platform, and Prabhupada is instructing us in the purport that we should at least understand theoretically that we are not male, female, and we don't have this. We should come out of this bodily identification, and we discuss how to do that. We discuss how we have to understand the body is made of Panchamahabhut, and it's a city of 9 gates, and we are the Prakriti, and Krishna is the Purusha, and we have to be in the mood of servant. And when we serve, we become peaceful. And then we discussed, along with these 2 verses of Shukdev Goswami's, text 5 and 6, we also discussed how the different identities that we have, because most of us are at the level of the identity of the body and the mind, we never experience peace. But those at the level of the soul, where they give, even if they're not Hare Krishna devotees, like leaders, like selfless servants, they all experience peace. Now, within spirituality also, there are 2 ways, there are 2 levels. We discussed level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is where there are people who actually connect to they actually enter the state of samadhi. They actually, like Shukdev Goswami's example we discussed, how they are transcendental sense with the material world. Now, within the, and this is a level of peace, but in Bhakti Yoga is promising us love. Bhakti Yoga is promising us a dynamic exchange of emotions with Krishna. So how do we access that? How do we live in the level of level 2? Because artificially we cannot live at level 2. We, from level 0, which is animal life, we have jumped to level 2 without experiencing awakening of our peaceful state. Krishna implores us to be peaceful. So we will discuss in our Wednesday class, before we go to text 7, we will briefly discuss about our natural peaceful state. How do we recognize our natural state of peace? Once we recognize our peaceful state and we operate in that state, then we can actually connect to Krishna better. So I want to discuss, basically my agenda would be to discuss how at the end of the session, what I wanted, which I couldn't achieve today. Today, before every class I come, I prepare. What do I want the audience to know? What do I want the devotees to feel after the end of the class? And what do I want them to do? These are the 3 questions I answer, and that is how I mentally prepare my class. So today I couldn't achieve what I come with the plan because of some time, and today I overshot the time. So what I want the audience to know, what I want you to know is that we have what is called as a concept called as a home state, a state where we are naturally peaceful and blissful. We all have that. So I wanted to share that. I wanted the audience to know about our natural, peaceful home state, our blissful spiritual state. That state we have to discover. That I wanted to share. Second, what I wanted the audience to feel after the end of the class, I wanted them to feel confident, and I wanted you to trust yourself that you can recognize that state. And this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to be blissful in serving Krishna. I wanted you to be on that, to feel confident of exploring that. And third, what I wanted you to do was I wanted you to chant better. And I know that once we understand this, we can chant better. So I would like to share this. Today it's not possible because we're already 4:30, and plus I've got a few things to do. So before we go to text 7, maybe Abhishek Prabhu or Mohit Prabhu can remind me on Wednesday. Otherwise, I may land up continuing with text 7, which is fine with me. But so we have discussed text 5 and 6 today. So I want to sincerely thank all of you for participating. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.